Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third episode of the online career guidance program for NASPA. And once again, I'm honored to be here. And again, thank you for making time. And thank you for those of you who have joined in the last couple of weeks. It is an honor, and I really want to express my appreciation for that. My appreciation also goes to the executives and everyone who comes together to make this event possible. Today we have a special event. It's the Career Women's Empowerment, and so welcome to all our ladies and women. We owe so much to you, and we see you as definitely an integral part of the future of our country and our nation. And so we are honored to have you. Welcome as well to the men, because we cannot have a coherent society of progress for women without having the men on board and the men being supportive, especially in terms of behaviors that need to change. And so thank you all for coming. And I just wanted to say one other thing, which is that you might have noticed that my background has changed. And it's because I am in Ghana now. I am in Accra, but we obviously have to continue this as a virtual program due to COVID protocols, and so again, just wanted to give you that update. But thanks for joining, and we'll go ahead and get started. If you have lived in the world, or you have seen a bit of history, you'd realize that women have made tremendous progress over the years. What you will see is that a lot of the issues that women have faced have been, as a result of traditional, cultural, or sometimes religious values that used to exist, either values or practices. And some of these have evolved as we've had more education, more scientific research, and basically a re-evaluation of values in our society. And so, if you look, let's kick it off with some inspiration about some great women and some of the progress women have made. Whether it's from the women's suffrage movement in the 1920s in the U.S. to the women's rights movement in the 1970s in the U.S. So many women have come in to play their part in creating a world where women progress not just in their career but in other spheres of life. We have people like Rosa Parks, who started who is credited with starting the civil rights movement. We have other people like Wangari Maathai, who was the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She was a Kenyan environmentalist, and even though she's no more with us, she definitely played her part. And we have people like Malala Yousafzai, who is a Pakistani girl who won the Nobel Peace Prize at 14 years, and I think that tells you some of the great things women are doing. And of course, we cannot leave out someone like Michelle Obama, the first African American First Lady of the United States. And so that is another powerful lady who is contributing and has contributed so much to the world. And one of our own people we can look up to as well from Ghana is Yaa Asantewaa, who fought against the British even when the men could not come up to fight. And so you see that we have a lot of tremendous success and progress from our women. And I can only hope and I can only be certain that this trajectory is going to go upwards, that it's going to get better. And so that is my take and my optimism. But now let's go back. Let's look at some of the challenges that women have faced in the past, and what is it that has hindered women's progress in their careers, because it's important that we discuss this and confront these issues if we're going to really empower women in their careers. One of the first things that has caused this is what we call the flexible work arrangement. And again, this is all these points I'm raising are all based on research, and certain organizations that have worked hard to promote women's efforts, like the UN Catalyst, among others, Brookings Institution as an example, right? So what they are saying as an example is that women need more flexible work arrangements in their careers, especially when it comes to children and caregiving. Either the women are tasked or feel that they have to give or take care of their children, which again in some situations that's the case, or they have to give care to their elderly parents or someone who might be disabled and be at home. So flexible work arrangements is something that is a challenge at this time. Equal pay is also a challenge. If you look at a place like the US, I think the stats show that women make maybe, I think, 90 cents on the dollar for as compared to men. Obviously, it's probably, and I would assume, not different in Ghana and in Africa. And so we need to say that women need to be paid equally for the equal work that men also do, right? I think it's fair because, especially if the men think about it, if they had daughters, would they want their daughter to also make a lot of money and take care of them, or take care of themselves at least? So let's think about this and recognize equal pay is a problem. The third thing is access to hot jobs. Now, what this means is that some women do not even get the chance to be allowed by men to be given the access to what they call hot jobs that are very big and will lead to certain huge positions like CEO or anything related to the C-suite or executive director of an NGO or those kinds of things. Very high level profile jobs. Sometimes they don't hear about them because the men keep those to themselves. The other thing is obviously race and gender bias. Now, you may have heard of recent racial issues in the US and across the world in terms of protests related to the murder of George Floyd. So African women in particular, of which Ghanaian women are a part, already face or are likely to face racial discrimination. Now, on top of that, they are also facing gender bias. And so now, when you put the two together, they normally end up at the barrel of the society, which is very difficult. And so, what you have is a situation where some workplaces are non-inclusive. They don't include women. They don't include them in decision making. And you have also men who are promoted on potential, but women who are promoted on performance. So potential is what you can do, and performance is what you've done in the past. If women are always going to be judged based on what they've done in the past, then how do they have the chance to improve themselves if they've never had work experience before, right? So think about it. These are issues that women are facing in their careers. Now, the next thing is role models. And the key here is you can't see, or you can't be what you haven't seen, right? And so if you go to a company where there are no women in leadership, there are no black women in leadership, there are no black women doing a lot, Ghanaian women, who are leading maybe political parties or leading companies, women who get discouraged. Women get discouraged and they say, I don't see anybody who has done it, so how can I do it, right? But we must push them and encourage them that they can be the ones to put a foot in the door, break that glass ceiling, and take that step to open the gates to women joining as well in the future. And let's look at something called sponsorship. And what that essentially means is that usually men have a way of supporting each other, certain kind of sponsorship. If a man really believes in another fellow man and he thinks, okay, he can really do the work, he promotes him, he helps him, he gives him the resources he needs. to enter those kind of areas or positions in their career. But usually when it comes to women, they are judged so heavily, even by their own women sometimes, or their own female friends. Um, and it boggles the mind, because what you wonder about is, why wouldn't women support women in some cases? And again, people are free to make their decisions, but again, when women complain about not being treated fairly, you would assume that they would want to support themselves first. So that is an irony. I remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president in the United States. I just kind of interacted with some of my coworkers, to just kind of gauge where they stood. And a lot of the women said, nope, we don't support her because she's fake. So, but I was stunned, so it begs the question, not just the men, but what role do women themselves have to play in supporting their fellow women? All right. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is a challenge women are facing in their career, is sexual harassment. That's a big one. And we don't have enough time to talk about it all, but can you imagine going to work and not feeling safe? Because you have a boss, you have somebody, a colleague who might, violate you in one way or another in a sexual sense. It boggles the mind that we live in such a society nowadays, or we still live in a society that has high levels of sexual harassment, and so it is a problem. And I think companies need to be very firm and strong with their policies, but also with their enforcement in making sure that sexual harassment is no longer a thing. And let's look at the next thing that is a challenge: gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes. Some of the cultural stereotypes, and I've already talked about it a little bit, that women face are basically, about, okay, you are supposed to take care of the children, you are supposed to be at home cooking food in the kitchen, you don't need to go to school, you don't need to do this or do that, you can't, do certain things, those are meant for the men. These stereotypes, I understand, obviously, there may be certain, kinds of jobs, maybe some kind of heavy labor intensive, or a certain kind of acts that women themselves may feel they want the men to do, or they don't feel like they are built for. But that's not true, because you can always find a woman who can break those cycles. And as an example, what if Santua thought she could not lead the army to fight the Ghanaian Ashanti army, to fight, to fight the British, when the men sat down and weren't willing to fight? So women also need to believe in themselves, but the men should not stereotype them out of believing in themselves, right? If you think about, something like in the U.S. and how, women have worked so hard to have progress, and they keep working hard and to have more CEOs and all these other people, it tells you that gender stereotypes, are a big problem in women's careers. And so keep that in mind as we go along. One of the other things is that women also feel that they don't get a lot of credit for the work they do, and they don't get a lot of second chances the way men, do sometimes. So basically what that means is that when a woman makes a mistake at the job, when she messes up, she could be fired right away, because she's a woman, she might get pregnant and have to go on leave. So she's essentially quote unquote disposable. We can just let her go, as compared to the man who is not going to be pregnant and need to go on leave. He's not going to essentially create a sense of uh, unaffiliation, because same genders tend to click closer in certain spheres. If you go to a bar, sometimes men want to just drink with their men and boys be boys and all of that. But essentially, we need to challenge the idea and make sure that women are given credit for the work they've done, and that we give them second chances. That's the way we can begin the process to change what the situation is as relates to women in their careers. All right, now let's look at a few things statistically about the US, and then we'll go a little bit into Africa, and then slightly into Ghana. And it's a little bit of Ghana because Ghana is part of Africa. So when I talk about Africa, we are part of it, but I just want to highlight a few things. And there are also a few charts, I think 2 of them, with an additional quote by Michelle Obama that I'll be sharing, and to keep that in mind. But let's dive into this. In December 2018, 58.8, which is about 59% of adult women ages 20 and older participated in the U.S. labor force, with 73.8 million adult women employed, right? And their current unemployment rate is 3.8%, which is the same as it was in 2000, right? So we need to see some more improvement. If as of 2018, the stats still mirrored what was going on in 2000, then we have more work to do. And the other thing we're also looking at is, about 50.04 of American jobs as of December, which excludes, farmers and other self-employed individuals, were held by women. 50.4. That's not that bad. 50.4% of American jobs. That's about half of the jobs women are holding. So, according to the Thompson Reuters Foundation, with support of the Rockefeller Foundation, they had a report. They had a research where they went into the G20 countries to see what the state of women's employment is, what the state of women's career is, and essentially they found out that women in Britain, Australia, Brazil, Canada, and Canada also ranked the gender pay gap as their biggest workplace worry. And then women in China expressed the least concern. So you see that location and geography also plays a role in the way certain women perceive the issues they face in their careers. So women in China didn't really care about pay gap, but those in Britain, Australia, Brazil, and Canada, essentially Europe, North America, and South America, expressed concern. Harassment keeps coming up as a major workplace issue, and it's one of the women's top 5 concerns. And so, again, if you have been in a situation where you've been ever harassed, please do find the strength and the courage to speak up, so that action can be taken. I know society places the burden on the woman. I know it's very hard for people to believe you, because they think you're trying to bring down a man. But we've seen a Me Too movement, and we've seen people as powerful in the U.S. as examples such as Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein and a couple of other people, even Bill Cosby, who are fallen due to the Me Too movement. And even here in Ghana, we had a report for the BBC Africa Eye documentary team on sex for grade in the universities, which is very wrong, to the highest levels, and so it's a challenge, but we need to change the culture of the workplace. All right, so basically, what we need to go ahead and look at is that um, it's encouraging though that about half of the women they polled in their research showed that women are optimistic across the world um, with their, about the prospects of having a child and keeping their career. So it does look like, at least for the maternity leave policies, the most companies and governments are making enough provision so that women don't have to lose their jobs simply because they have a child. Now let's look at Africa, and that includes Ghana as well. Let's look at some statistics and some research that has been done on this. So the biggest issue in Africa when it comes to women's empowerment is poverty. Poverty is still a struggle for millions of people, in particularly women, because culturally, women may not be allowed to own land, they may not be allowed to inherit land or property. Everything seems to be going to the men. Even there are some marriages or communities where the woman's income, which she earns, may have, you know, which she earns from her toil and sweat, is given back, given to the man for him to keep. And it boggles the mind why that is the case. There was a 1995 Beijing World Conference on Women. Some of you may have heard about it. And, basically that conference highlighted, poverty as one of the major issues. And it still is to this day. Education of our girls is a problem. There's still some communities where girls don't go to school because they are girls. Parents must be encouraged to take their children to school. And then economic activity and inequality in employment. And again, similar to some of the things I've already mentioned. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, because basically what they're saying is, if you give women the chance to do the things that men do, more women will be in the labor force, and it will help us in our GDP as a whole. It makes sense to let women also join the workforce and work and build their careers and build their wealth and educate their children, especially their female children, because it helps the country as a whole. If you keep them away and put them down, you are slowing the economics, you're slowing the growth. And so it's common sense, it's good economics. Let's make sure there's economic activity balanced out for women, and that we do not have biases in employment. All right, so obviously in the past we've had, and still today, we've had some negative cultural and religious values that do not help us. I think that we need to make sure that we fight against things like female genital mutilation and other forms of violence and abuse, and girls not having their freedom over their bodies and other things in terms of do I get married or not? Because if you engage a girl who is 14 years in an early marriage, it goes back to poverty, but it also denies the girl of a very bright future. Some women themselves doubt their abilities, and so again, let's encourage women to go out, shine, and do what they need to do. The World Bank in 2010 indicated that basically the ratio of boys to girls in the primary and secondary education is was 0.96, right? And so for every 96, as an example, every 96 girls, 100 boys go to school, right? And this was for the MENA, the MENA area in Africa, which is Middle East and North Africa. And the other thing is the region's female labor force participation of 26% at that time was well below the 39% rate in other low and middle income countries. Now let's look at what the Brookings Institution says about this, because I like this one because this is pretty recent. It's 2020. So what the Brookings Institution is saying is that in developing countries, including in Africa, which includes Ghana, right, 75 to 90% of non-agricultural employment is informal. 75 to 90% of agricultural work is informal and low-paid work in which women are 3 times more likely to be employed as contributing family workers than their male counterparts. So, and then they go on to say what that means, that women are often unpaid and vulnerable for exploitation. There's also a lack of affordable care for children. If you're in the informal sector, you really need to balance raising your kids and making money on the side. There's a lack of basic affordable care. And so if we can provide more care and the flexibility for some women to provide for their elderly, that would be good. Now let's look at Ghana. And I think in Ghana, again, we have a situation where I think a lot of the traditional and cultural values, although evolving, and I've seen great progress few, decades or years, but there's more we can do to, number one, and we'll come to that in a bit, but just to give you a hint, send more girls to school, empower women in their careers, give them second chances, don't discriminate, don't be biased, and help them grow and succeed for themselves and for their families. And the other thing is women have to believe in themselves as well. It goes both ways. They have to believe, they have to perform, but the environment needs to be healthy and conducive. All right, so what do we do about this, and how do we solve these issues? I'm going to give you a few hints, a few points here, and then what I'll do is I'll transition this to the love of my life. Her name is Joyce Danso, and she will come up and give you her take on this, because she's a woman, and I wanted her to talk to you and give her take on this, and and then we can wrap this up finally. And so basically, let's go ahead and look at a few solutions here. First of all, we need to tell women's positive stories. We need women to be able to come out confidently and say what they've achieved and what they can do with their skills. We need to help them achieve full equitable participation in the labor market. Look, everyone has a part to play. The men, the women. We need to say, women, come to work. We need you. You are smart, you are intelligent. Please do your best, contribute to the country. Come and work and contribute to the GDP of the country. Also, we need more women to engage, to build more skills. How are you going to do that work if you don't have the skills? How are you going to improve if you don't have the learning and the training? So make good use of that, but also push yourself. Find mentors, find people who can help you and who can challenge you. All these are key things you need to keep in mind. Now, according to the UN, we also need to make sure that women have equitable access to the productive resources as men do, right? And it comes out with things like farming, right? How can a man have such a successful farm and a woman doesn't? So let's make sure that's more equitable and more balanced. There's an organization called Fair Trade International, which has created fair trade standards to engage and promote the equal treatment of women and prohibit any gender-based violence and harassment. So fair trade has standards and has farmers who get certified based off of their standards, and they are optimistic because they've helped to really grow and empower Ghanaian women who are cocoa farmers, right? Help them to hold leadership positions and help them to be more productive with their farming. And so there is progress, then the organization is doing a lot. Before I transition into Joyce, I just wanted to say a quick story here. I am proud to recognize my twin sisters who have, against all odds, against discrimination in many ways because they are albino, but they have worked very hard, very hard, against all odds to become, senior auditors. I even think principal auditors, and at the Ghana Audit Service, and they have also become activists and advocates for women's rights and rights for disabled people in Ghana and beyond. One of them is the president of the Ghana Federation of Disabled Organizations, and they're doing a great job. And so I want to salute them as women who are doing and contributing their quota. I know I've been blessed to have them, and my brother in the U.S. has as well. So just wanted to throw that in quickly. And so with that, I'm going to transition to Joyce, and she'll take it away. Thank you, guys.